All right, so I'll tell you something about classification of plants and them about naming plants and using scientific names. Well, to be able to talk about things, they must have some kind of names. Also, there are different ways to classify things, for example, by use. You might start classifying plants like edible ones and non-edible ones, for example. I might use a different method. Well, evolution theory, after the discovery of the evolution theory, scientists started to name and also classify organisms depending on how they are related to each other. And we're talking about taxons, which is a certain group of organisms in a taxonomic rank. So there are several taxonomic ranks, in this case in plants. The main unit of taxonomic ranks is species. Here, for example, is Beta vulgaris, or beet, or beetroot. And then the next higher rank is genus. So some closely related species are gathered together into one genus. In this case, it would be Beta, the beets. And then closely related genera can be gathered together into a family. In this case, Amarantaceae, or the amaranth family. And on into orders and classes. Here the class is angiosperms, or the seed plants or flowering plants. And then again into divisions. Here it's tracheophytes, or the plants with tracheas, so the water conducting system. And until we get to kingdom, in this case, Plantae, the plants. Our kingdom would be Animalia, animals. And then there are also some secondary ranks, for example, subfamily, which is if you want to divide a family into smaller units before dividing them into different genera. Did I say that the plural of genus is genera? Well, now you know it. The scientific names are the official names of organisms. And the good thing with them is that they are the same in every single language. So they are the real names of things. Also, the rules of using them must be the same for everyone. And that's why there are some rules, for example, in naming them. The process of scientific description or naming of an organism is made according to specific principles. And the main principle is that it must be binded into one selected specimen, so-called type specimen. For example, here is a Fritillaria species, Fritillaria hermonis, it seems to be. And these type specimens kind of define the essence of the whole species. So these are really important specimens in collections. Uh, well, now we get to the technical part of this lecture. Now we go to the technical.
It was not technical before, or what?
No, it wasn't. I mean, actually, I mean that I'll go through the rules of naming how to use names of plants on different ranks and so on, and how you write them and so on. And these rules are the same in every language because these are the scientific names. So botanical nomenclature, and there's no point for you to remember this straight away, but you can later get these lectures, and then if you have if you're thinking like how to write this name or so, you can check from these slides how to use different names. Okay. So higher taxons are always written with capital first letter and not with italic. For example, family. Family is in plants, family, I would say, is the third most important taxonomic rank after species and genus. And the others are not so interesting. But if you know in which family a plant belongs to, it tells you a lot about it already. Yeah, the family always ends with ake. For example, Amaranthaceae, which is the amaranth family. And here you can see how it's written with first capital letter, non-italic, and ake ending. The generic name or the genus name is always written with italic, and there are no exceptions of this. And the first letter with capital letters. It can be used alone. For example, beta, which is or genus beta, which is the genus of beets. Yeah, and then species name is binomial, and it means that it's always used together with the genus name or generic name. It's always written in italics and lowercase. For example, Beta vulgaris, which is the beet plant. Here you can see how it's written. If you write just vulgaris without the beta part, it doesn't mean anything. Well, it means common, but many other species names also in plants have this word vulgaris. So you have to use it together with the generic name. The abbreviation of species is SP, which comes from species, Latin. It can be used when the species is not specified. For example, beta species, a species of beets. The generic name can be abbreviated if the species is already mentioned, like earlier in the text. For example, B. vulgaris. We know that we're still talking about Beta vulgaris. Often, especially in plants, there is the name of the author, and officially it should be there after the name of the species. The author is the one who described it in a scientific way. So, for example, in Beta vulgaris, there might be L, which is an abbreviation of Carl von Linné, who, by the way, invented the whole botanical nomenclature. and the way the binomial names of species. Then some lower ranks under the species. So species can be divided into subspecies that slightly differ from each other, but they still are the same species. So these are things that are used quite often in, for example, cultivated plants. Subspecies, which can be abbreviated with sub-SP or SSP, are also always written in italics and lowercase, and together with the whole species name. For example, Beta vulgaris, subsp vulgaris. And the subspecies word is not in italics because it's not the name. It just tells you that it's a subspecies. Then even smaller rank is variety, which is abbreviated var. It's also always with italics and lowercase and together with all these other things like Beta vulgaris, subspecies vulgaris, var conditiva. And again, even smaller rank is form or forma, abbreviated with F. The same thing with the others. For example, we have Betula pubescens, which is downy birch, and there's forma rubra, which is the red-leaved form of downy birch. Then sometimes plants hybridize. They can be intentionally hybridized, or it can happen in the nature also sometimes. And they are marked with multiplication sign that looks like X, but if you don't have it, you can just use X in front of the species epithet. For example, menta or menta ex piperita, which is peppermint, that is a hybrid between Mentha aquatica and Mentha spicarpa. And then the same thing with genus. Sometimes even two genera can hybridize together. In animals, it's very rare that that species from different genera hybridize. And if they hybridize, the offspring is usually sterile. But it's a different thing in plants, or maybe different, is often different thing in plants. Well, the genus hybrid is marked in the same way as species hybrid, and the multiplication sign is put in front of the genus name. For example, Sorbaronia, which is hybrid between Sorbus and Aronia. And when you talk out loud these scientific names, you don't say this X. So you would say Mentha piperita or just Sorbaronia. Orchids are famous for intergeneric hybrids, so hybrids between different genera. Here's an example of Potinara, which is a hybrid between the genera of Brassavola, Lelia, Cattleya, and Sophronitis. The most complex intergeneric hybrid that I was able to find was a cross between 8 different genera, not just species, but different genera, which is quite awesome. I think so, at least. Then something about cultivars that we're especially interested in here. We should talk about cultivars as a term. Cultivars are plants that are usually achieved by human selection or by hybridization intentionally. we shouldn't talk about varieties, because as we learned before, variety is a certain taxonomic rank here, just under subspecies. We shouldn't talk about varieties if we're talking about cultivars. Yeah. So the rules of the names of cultivars are slightly different from botanical nomenclature, but they do have their own nomenclature. If we're talking about a very complex hybrid, or we don't know the origin where the cultivar comes from, so we after the genus we mark only the name of the cultivar. For example, here Apothecaris rose is Rosa officinalis. So there's the generic name and the cultivar name. The cultivar name is always written with capital letter, or actually each word is written with capital letters. And there is also single quotes around the cultivar name. And they are not written in...
mihin mä oon sitten 15:30.
Yeah, I muted. Yeah, continue. That was Sasu.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to kind of... there are some cultivars that must be handled as a group because there are so many different cultivars in it, and they might differ from each other very, very slightly, and sometimes they don't even have special names. That's when we talk about cultivar group. So cultivar groups are also written with capital letter, including the word group, and no italic. So here you can see, for example, French roses are Rosa and Gallica group. And after that, there also can be the cultivar name with single quotes. Here is, for example, turnip. And here is rape for oil production, rapeseed oil. And they have the same species name, but the rape belongs to Oleifera group. And again, Napa cabbage or Chinese cabbage is the same species, but it belongs to the Pekingensis group. If the exact name is not known, it can be addressed, for example, in this case, Rosa hybr or hybrida, which means that it's a hybrid rose. We know it's a rose, we know it's a hybrid rose, but we don't know which hybrid it is, or it might even not have a name. Or if you don't know the species, you could say like Rosa sp or Rosa species, a rose species. Then sometimes these can be a bit more complicated, even if we're talking about registered trade marks or registered cultivars. Then there might be these trademarks or registered trademark symbols after them, and they might be written a bit differently. But let's not go to that this time. Well, something about common names in English. You have different rules in your common language, that's your native language, and you'll have to find them out. I can tell the Finnish rules how to write common names, but all of you won't get anything from that. So you'll have to learn them by yourself other ways. In English, there isn't any special official common name for each species. For example, Rosa setigera might be called prairie rose, climbing prairie rose, climbing wild rose, Michigan rose, or maybe some other names too. There might be local names and so on. For example, in Finland, we do have official names, and you can find them in botanical literature. For example, plant guides. Also in English, same plant name might mean different plants. Like mountain ash can be rowan, the red plant that the red tree that makes these sour berries, for example, in Scandinavia. And it also can mean gum tree, which is a species of eucalyptus in Australia. So that might be a bit confusing. And gum tree also is different than rubber tree, which is Ficus elastica, that we get rubber from, or the rubber fluid from. And there's another example why we should use scientific names, so we know exactly what plant we're talking about. In English, the species common names can be written with capitals. Like, for example, here is narrow-leaved coneflower. If there is a dash between the name, so it's kind of compound word, the latter one is not written with capital letter. Or you can just write them all with non-capitals, but you have to be consistent. So if you write a text where you have these common names, you write them either with capitals or without, and that means all of them. And of course, the names of cultivars are written as mentioned before, like Queen Elizabeth Rose, for example, is written with the specific cultivar name with the quotes. Well, something about pronunciation of scientific names. I just told you how convenient it is to that we have these scientific names. They're the same in every language. However, the pronunciation is not same in every language. There are no speakers of classical Latin in mother tongue, I mean, and no one actually knows how Latin was spoken originally. But there are good guesses. Well, anyways, in English, the scientific names are pronounced as if you were reading English out loud. And that's, for a non-English speaking person, that might be a bit difficult. You might have to learn to pronounce each scientific name. Well, in Finland, we use classical Latin and classical Latin pronunciation. I don't know in Norway and Denmark. Yeah, sorry, but that's another thing that you will have to find out yourselves. So now I'm talking about this Finnish point of view of classical Latin. In Finnish, we have this good thing that the words are mostly pronounced the same way as they are written. And in classical Latin, there are some exceptions in pronunciation, or more like notes in pronunciation, like C and CH are always pronounced with K. So that would be something like Psychorium in English. In classical Latin would be Cicorium. Also, a funny thing to see that this fruit is not citrus, it's citrus. And yeah, then some other things like AE and OE are pronounced E. For example, Aliaceae should be pronounced Aliake. Or PH is F and RH is R and TH is T, like Phtyrus, for example. I'm not even trying to pronounce that in English. Or QU is pronounced Kv, so Quercus would be Quercus, and so on. But these are the basic rules in classical Latin. Then, in case of loan words, scientific names always mean something, and they're mostly based on a classical Latin or ancient Greek, but they are kind of handled like as if they were classical Latin. But anyways, there can be loan words from different languages anyway. So they can be pronounced like in classical Latin or in the original language. So for example, this orchid Goudiera can be pronounced Goudiera or Goduera, which would be the classical Latin way to pronounce it. Also, earlier there were accents used in scientific names that showed where the long vowels are. For example, here, this word trifida, there were this accent, which tells that the E is long, the first E is long. Or here, hierokloe, with these two dots would mean that it's not pronounced like E, as in here, but oe, and so on. But nowadays, they are no longer in use, so you don't really know what the long vowels are or the accents are in classical Latin. For example, you might know for mathematics things like plus and minus. They're actually pronounced plus and minus. So there you go. You just have to know how to pronounce them. So here you get some ideas how to pronounce scientific names. If you want to do it correctly, it probably takes a bit time to learn. Okay, the last slide. How to learn scientific names. They might be quite difficult and often sound very strange with quite hard parts to pronounce. Well, something about them, you might try to learn some key words or expressions. There are just 4 terms that quite regularly appear in the names of cultivated plants. Here, for example, this officinalis, which means medical, sativus, which means cultivated, hortensis, which means off garden or growing in garden, and vulgaris, which means common. In the internet, you can find lists of the species names of plants, where they're also told what they mean. Well, mnemonics is a good way to remember scientific names. If you make a sort of immortal combo sentence in your mind of the scientific name and the common name, or maybe the plant's appearance, that might help you a lot. The basic rule is the sillier or funnier the combo is, the better. You just have to remember how you've kind of transformed the name, otherwise it might get a bit awkward and embarrassing. Here are some examples of scientific names that might be easy to remember. You might find some kind of ideas how to remember these, for example. These are not the ones that you have to learn, but these are just examples. For example, this Amorphophallus cognac arum plant. Amorphophallus literally means disformed penis. And in English, it's called cognac. It's the species that, from the roots, they make these shirataki noodles. And then Cassida vittata, bordered tortoise beetle, might sound a bit funny for you. And also Finnish-speaking people might find this Pseudostyphlus pillumus rather funny. Is it funny? No? Okay, it's a weevil. And Carex vaginata, shelfed sedge. Vaginata means a shelf, actually. Yeah. So you might try to find some mnemonics to remember the scientific names. Do you have any questions so far? Next, we might we'll start to look at the plant specimens.
I think Jason has a question.
Yep.
Yeah, just one question.
Yep.
Do you know of a good online resource that could be kind of a comprehensive list?
Of the names?
Of the, yeah.
I can't remember it by heart, but I can check that for later. And it can be probably sent to you.
Yeah.
There
Perfect.
is. I will find it.
Okay, I don't know if there's any other questions, but before we continue with the workshop, let me show you just briefly. We will need to discuss together with Norway and Denmark, and also here in Finland. Heidi will be back from her summer vacation. She's on vacation now in January, but here's just an example what you would need to know in the exam. There are, for example, about 20 different plants and vegetables or herbs. And then when you see a plant that is leek, in Finnish purjo, then you would need to type the family and then whole species name. So for example, when you see a leek on the table, you write down in a piece of paper the complete name, and then also the name in Finnish and or in English. And then of course in Denmark, in English and or in Danish, and in Norway in English and or in Norwegian language. So this is just one example. And we will send a list of these vegetables and plants with scientific names and also with English names. I think there will be about 50 or so. We will decide together with Denmark and Norway, and then that's a list that you have plenty of time to study, and then the exam will be sometime in August or September. And I think this is a good decision to have the exam after the summer, because then in the summertime you can become familiar with all these different plants and vegetables and herbs, and then start learning the scientific names for these individual plants and herbs. Yes, okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, so I have divided these plants into different sort of groups, and yeah, the main thing is to make you look at these things from a botanical point of view. Well, in this table, we have some plants of same species, but for different uses. These are, of course, cultivars, and they have been selected from the one species. They have been selected to produce different kinds of vegetables. Well, we can start here. Here we have Brassica rapa. You know what it is? Turnip. Yes. This thing is actually a tuberose taproot, and there are some parts of stem together here also. But from the very same plant, Brassica rapa, we have this form, Pekinensis group, which is used for its leaves, right? Yep. So you you wouldn't believe that these are the same species, and they have like a common ancestor that has looked, well, very different, like a normal plant. Even more complex species is here, Brassica oleracea, or I would say cabbage. There are this capitata group, from which we use leaves and parts of the stem between the leaves, red cabbage. Then, quite similar but smaller, is this Gemmifera group, and these are axillary buds. So these are buds from the leaf axes, and which have started to grow into small shoots. Then we have another part, a tuberose form, the Gondylodes group, which is a tuber in a stem. So it's not a root, it's a stem actually. Then we have this Italica group, which is a cluster or inflorescence, and it has these numerous little flowers in it, and we eat it immature before they open. Then we have this nasty thing here, which is also inflorescence of the same species, but the flowers or the buds are mutated, so they will never flower. They just produce more and more buds from the middle. Are you familiar with fractals? Yeah. Fibonacci, maybe. Okay, so especially in case of cabbage, you can see that from this very same plant, human has developed or selected like different kinds of forms. Yeah. Imagine if you could combine all these. Yeah, then there are some other parts of plants, just to think about which parts are used from which plants. Well, the stems or shoots as whole are used in asparagus. You can see here. Sometimes they are grown under some kind of shelter, maybe mold or something on top, so they won't produce chlorophyll in the darkness and they will be pale. More about stems. Here is cinnamon stick, which is bark of cinnamon tree. Also very aromatic. Not very appetizing for many insects. And here leek from the onion genus, and from leek we usually don't eat the leaves. We probably should eat the leaves, right? And the bulb is actually here. It's very elongated, so it looks very different than bulb of this regular onion, for example. Then here is celery. Is it called stem celery, or what is it? Leaf celery? Celery? Well, celery plants anyways. And we eat the leaf petioles. So here you can see parts of the leaf blade, but it's the petioles that we're interested in. The same thing in rhubarb, for example. And of course, then there are forms of celery where you eat a stem tuber, the root celery. Oh, here. These roots are quite interesting. They are roots of licorice plant. Sometimes you eat that kind of fruit too. Okay. Then I told you earlier about ways of preserving energy. And there are several kinds of tubers here. They are from plants from completely different families. So they might look a bit similar partly, but they're not very related to each other. This is sweet potato, and this is a root tuber. While here is potato, which is a stolon tuber. So stolons are these kind of long stems that have these kind of small shoots in the tip of them, and they're supposed to help the plant to crawl into new places. But potato makes these tubers in the ends of those stolons, and they eventually detach and start growing on their own. Then here we have carrot, which is swollen taproot, so the main root, and the red beet, which is actually stem tuber, but I think the tip of it is a root tuber. So there are both stem and root in this tuber. Ginger, it's a rhizome, so underground stem as a tuber. And then this special thing, a bulb in this onion. And the layers of an onion are the leaf bases, swollen leaf bases. Yeah, maybe we'll just go this way, how these are organized. We go a bit back and forth, but I think it's okay. Here we have some plants under the title Plants Protecting Themselves. You probably know how the sage smells like, or cilantro or rosemary. They have really strong scent, and the meaning of that scent is to repel insects, or actually many other animals, like white-tailed deer, for example. Yeah. And for example, this sage has also this hairy surface, which makes it more difficult for insects to approach. Their feet might get stuck into these hairs. All of these plants are more or less aromatic, and as I told you, that aromatic thing is to repel animals from eating them. Of course, Coriandrum sativum is a plant that we can use the leaves, cilantro for spice, herb. And then these are the seeds, or actually not the seeds, but schizocarps of coriander. So a type of unopening, hard, dry fruit, of course. Also, schizocarps are here. These are the caraway seeds. These both belong to the carrot family, Apiaceae. Here is the drupes, or berries with one seed, of Piper nigrum, which is black pepper. You can eat these as they are like this, or you can peel the outer layer of the drupe away when you get white pepper, or you can also eat them raw when you have green peppers. Here's again an example of one family, the ginger family, curcuma longa, which is turmeric. And the similar way as ginger here, they are rhizome tubers, or tuberous rhizomes, both used as spice. And then here is cardamom, Eleutheria cardamom, and these are seeds which come from a capsule. But these belong to the same family, but you use the same part of them, the different part of them, I mean. Yeah. Actually, now we should go over there. Here we have 2 tables of different kinds of fruits. First, dry fruits. As you can see, they are quite dry, or at least supposed to be dry. Here are follicles or capsule-like follicetums of star aniseed. They are there are simple follicles which has one suture that opens like this, and the whole thing is actually kind of aggregate of follicles. Yeah. Very unpleasant for insects. And then these are legumes, I would say, of bean. And these are, well, they don't look very dry, but the final product should be dry, because this should actually dry up and then open, and the seeds would come off from there. So these are unripe pods or legumes. Now here is an orchid, one of the only orchids that are used for culinary purposes, which is Vanilla planifolia. This is actually a dry fruit called capsule, and they are collected when they are not yet ripe, and then they are fermented, and during the fermentation process the enzymes cut these products in there into smaller pieces, which makes the fragrance in in the vanilla pod, which is not a pod, it's a capsule. Then nuts. These are chestnuts. Yeah, these are botanically called nuts. Yeah, so hard, indecent or unopening fruit that has one seed in it. And these are hazelnuts, but this is only the seed. The shell around it is the real nut, or the shell with the seed is the nut or the fruit. Again, an opening, indecent, dry fruits with a single seed in it. Now here is a sunflower seed head. So it's not a flower, it's a very thick inflorescence. And the fruit of this is an achene, which is here. This is not sunflower seed, this is sunflower achene, which has a seed inside it. Yeah, and as you can see, this is one fruit, so this whole flower head is originally made of several flowers, hundreds of them. I'll put it back there. And then, yeah, again, we have this schizocarps, which is a sort of nut or achene. In this case, the aniseed, what is it? Aniseed plant. Okay, then some fleshy fruits we have here. We have berries and drupes. Berries, for example, one of the biggest berries in the world. Well, this is a small one. Watermelon. It's a soft, fleshy fruit and seeds inside. Yeah, you might not think this is a berry. Even less berry-like thing is this, a banana. It's a berry. Yep.
Why do they call something berry?
Well, berries are basically unopening or indecent, soft fruits that have seeds inside them. Mostly it's like that, but sometimes it's not, as we get there a bit later. But yeah, basically the softness is the berry thing, but it depends, sort of. Here's also a berry that is related to other Solanaceae. In the Solanaceae family, I can't remember the English name for that. But anyways, potatoes and capsicums or bell peppers and chilies and indeed tomatoes are related to this. I forgot the name of this.
There's gooseberry.
Yeah.
Inca berry also.
Yeah, Inca berry also.
Yeah. It's a type of gooseberry.
Peruvian gooseberry or something like that.
Yeah.
And here you can see the berry. Yeah. But also the sepals stay there. The sepals are the outermost parts of the flower that cover the bud before it opens. In this case, the sepals start to grow and cover the developing fruit, which is a berry. And then these special berries, here you might recognize these, of the genus Citrus. This is called a Hesperidium. And the part that we want to eat are these swollen hairs of the mesocarp, or the central layer. Isn't that clear? Then here is an interesting berry because it's sort of dryish. It's hard to distinguish the layers, but the part that in this berry, which is a passion fruit, the part that we want to eat is actually the arils or arillus. And you can see the seeds here, and from inside the seed grows this aril. Yeah, well, in Finnish it would be siemenvaippa. Yep. And then another fruit. Actually, I don't know which type of fruit. I think it's a drupe, but this is a lychee. And the white stuff in lychee fruit that we want to eat, it's not actually part of the fruit, but it's also an arillus, an outgrowth from the seed. Very nice and aromatic. Yeah, then some more drupes. Here is plum, and you can see it's a soft, fleshy fruit with this thing we call stone. But this stone, actually, it's not just the seed, but what you can see here, the hard part, is the inner part of the fruit itself, and inside that is the real seed. Then there are some aggregate drupes, or we could call them druplets. This is raspberry. Yeah, it consists of several small drupes. And here's in the same genus is the blackberry, but it has also something else. It's not just an aggregate of druplets, but there is this small fleshy part inside. It's actually the receptacle where all these druplets are attached to. So this is both an aggregate druplet. There's both a aggregate druplets and also an accessory fruit inside it. Yeah, it's just, you can compare these two. The other one is hollow, and the other one has the receptacle inside it. Now, one fruit comes out from one flower. And in one flower, there might be several these carpels that have the seeds inside. For example, in this case, you have many druplets that come from single carpels. And there is one flower with several carpels which form this group of drupes. But in this case, which is the pineapple, this is a multiple fruit. So there are berries. You can see the stem here. That should kind of ring the bell. And also that it continues growing here. The tip of the stem is growing here again, or keeps growing here. So there are several fruits here that together form a multiple fruit around the stem. Yeah, so originally there has been many flowers, or actually an inflorescence around here, and then it will grow into multiple fruits. Then accessory fruits that are the part that we're interested in is not actually the fruit, but it's the receptacle where all the pistils stand on. Here we have strawberry. So this is the receptacle, and the real fruits of strawberry, which are achenes, so indecent, dry, hard-shelled fruits with just one seed inside, are here. So if I ask you how many strawberry fruits can you see here, you would say hundreds.
Sorry, what's the difference between strawberry and blackberry? They both have the receptacle inside.
Yes. Actually, it is the same structure, but you could imagine that in this, if you compare these two, so these little achenes are the same things as these little droplets here.
Okay.
These are just hard, and these are soft. They, yeah, they both belong to the rose family. And I mean, in rose family, there are lots of these strange things. For example, pear and apple, they both belong to the rose family. And they also have accessory fruits called a pome. So this fleshy part comes from the receptacle, and this part inside where the seeds are that you usually don't eat is a kind of follicle, but they are so closely bound together that it's kind of hard to see which part is exactly which part. But yeah, the fruit is the small part inside here. Then one more special thing. This is cross-section of a fig. And this is kind of weird thing because this fig is full of little droplets. And actually, this is a kind of inflorescence, enclosed inflorescence, where the pollinators come here inside through this hole, and it's full of flowers, originally, of course. And when it's pollinated, it forms these little droplets with fleshy parts, and then again, this soft part around here is a receptacle. Yeah.
So it's the wrong way around.
Yeah, sort of. This is the way, yeah. If you compared with strawberry, for example, they would be like, it's the, let me show you. A bit similar structure would be the sunflower, but you can imagine like this outer layer here is a bit like the same as the outer layer here. So if you imagine the sunflower flower head would kind of curve around and close here in the middle, it would form something like this. This is pollinated by tiny, tiny wasps. You can Google more about that if you dare. Yeah. We also eat sometimes flowers, not just these edible flowers for lovely little decorations, but here we have capers, which are flower buds of Capparis spinosa. If you open them, you can find the petals, and also you can find all the other parts, stamens and so on. Looks like a mess. Then some other flower buds that we like are these cloves. And sometimes we're interested in just a tiny little bit of a plant. This is saffron from saffron crocus. It's the style or the tip part of the pistil, the female part of the flower. That's quite delicate. That's why it's so expensive, because you won't have many styles in one crocus plant or saffron plant. And then here we have artichoke, which is also a compound inflorescence like the sunflower. And here's a cross section. So all these things here are supposed to grow into little flowers when the inflorescence develops. But I suppose we're mostly interested in this part, which is again the receptacle, and we discard nearly all other parts. Yeah, maybe the bases of the scales around here we eat. Now we've been talking about fruits, but there are two more examples of parts of sexual reproduction of plants. Now we're talking about gymnosperms. So for example, conifers, they do not have fruit because the female leaf that carries the seeds, it's not enclosed, but it's like this, sort of open. Here is pine nut, pine. What is this called? Yeah, it's a cone, but the plant is pine. Pinja, Pinus pinea. And yeah, it's a cone, and it will eventually open up, and on top of these scales there are seeds, the pine nuts that we want to eat. And this is a juniper berry, but it's not a berry. It's even less berry than a strawberry, because these are also cones, but they are just all the scales are fused together and become soft. You might think it's a berry, but it's not. Do we still have time to look at this?
Let's see. Yeah. Well, it's 12:15, so it's 15:12.
Yeah.
So do we have the students' possibility to walk around?
Yeah.
In Denmark and Norway, you can, yeah, and then we continue at 15:30. Is that enough?
I guess so.
Yeah. So I guess in Denmark and Norway, you can also now become familiar with vegetables that you have there in the kitchen, or you can have a break. We'll continue again at 15:30, 14:30 in Denmark and Norway.